Hello, everyone. My name is Diego Alfonso. I'm one of the hosts with the Florida Aviation Network. We are broadcasting live and in the clear from the Aerospace Discovery at the Florida Air Museum located at the Sun and Fun Complex in Lakeland, Florida. We're celebrating our 41st annual Sun and Fun Fly-In and Exposition. Today, our guest is KT Budde-Jones. She is an author. She has done so much because I did the homework on this, and even including searching for treasures. I understand.
How did you find that
Oh,
out?
see, I do my homework, and it's a pleasure for me to have you here,
Oh,
KT.
thank you very much. And yes, you have done your homework. Thank you.
I got your attention, didn't I?
You did. You got my attention. Absolutely. Well, there's a lot of treasures in Florida. We have found some off of Key West, where we found the Nuestra Señora de Atocha
Exactly.
off of Key West, Florida, 30 years ago. We're coming up on the 30th anniversary of that find, where we found $500 million worth of Spanish treasure on the bottom of the ocean.
I remember that.
I'm wearing a piece of eight right
Oh
here.
my God, that's history right there.
Right there. And now at Sun and Fun, we celebrate aviation history, because we bring in from Stallion 51, who I work for, we bring in P-51 Mustangs to fly in the air show. We're based at Kissimmee Airport, and from there we do orientation flights, we do training, we do training in T6s, as well as unusual attitude training in L-39. So we're a campus of higher learning, all pun intended on that. And we share the cockpit with people from all over the world who want to not only experience a Mustang by seeing one, but to be in the cockpit, taking the controls and flying one themselves. Because we have the rarest of the rare breed of Mustang. We have a dual cockpit, dual control Mustangs. So these are modified D model Mustangs that have, instead of having the traditional World War II fuel tank behind the pilot,
Right.
it has a complete setup of another cockpit there. So not only do people have the opportunity to fly the plane in the orientation flights, but when someone is lucky enough to own one of these beautiful planes, where else are they going to learn how to fly one
Exactly.
except with us at Stallion 51?
Kissimmee. That's right.
Kissimmee Airport. So Lakeland, Kissimmee, we're sort of joined in this corridor of classic aviation, holding up the traditions and the heritage of the aviation that was started here in Florida. It was 101 years ago that the first commercial flight flew out of St. Pete.
Correct.
And then, what was it, 1920s? In the 1920s, Pan Am flew out of Key West. Then, of course, Glenn Curtis absolutely developed South Florida when he went down there and started Hialeah and Opelika.
Right.
So aviation's been a huge part of Florida from the very beginning. We might not have done the first flight, but we were right there afterwards and developing it, and not only developing aviation, but developing the communities around aviation. Start of World War II, 1940s, there were 6 airfields in Florida. 6 military airfields. By the end of World War II, there were 227 of them. It just blew up. And not only did they have all these wonderful airfields like Lakeland is, and Kissimmee, and Sebring, just to name a few, Bartow, MCO, Orlando International, but they built whole communities and infrastructures around them, which actually allowed Florida to bloom into the #1 tourist destination in the world.
Exactly.
And that's because of aviation.
Of course. And there's another thing that I would like to bring up is that we're the #1 training,
Absolutely.
is the training capital of the world right here in Florida. As a matter of fact, you probably don't know this, but I'm an ex-FAA inspector.
Oh.
And right here at
You're here to help me?
Huh?
Are you here to help me?
You
Okay.
got it. You got it. That's my motto. I was here at the FISDO 15, and we certified 20 anywhere between 16 to 20% of the pilot population in the world.
Wow.
Right here in Central Florida.
I believe that. I believe that because Kissimmee is also quite the hub, just like Clewiston was during World War II. Clewiston was a huge training area for our allies. We trained lots of RAF pilots down, and that's off of near Opelika area, south of Opelika. But of course, Kissimmee, Lakeland, Bartow, Sebring were huge training fields, and still are today. I know there's training fields or training schools here in Lakeland. We have several in Kissimmee that go from anywhere from private pilot all the way through ATP. And of course, for that pilot who wants to really up their game and like to fly a Mustang or learn to fly a T6, transition training, or do unusual attitude training so they know what to do at that moment when everything turns bad, we do that as well. So you've got here in Central Florida, you've got the elementary school, middle school, high school, college, university, and postgraduate work right here.
Exactly.
You don't have to go very far. We're our own Harvard right here in Florida. And that's sort of what we celebrate when we come here and share it when we come to Sun and Fun. And right before Sun and Fun, there was another educational opportunity through the North American Trainer Association has a FAST clinic, Formation and Safety Training, in Sebring, Florida. North American Trainer Association, or NATA, really supports some very fine North American aviation planes. That's T6s, T-28s.
My favorite plane.
Oh, I know. P-51s, B-25s, which are also used as training somewhat. And right before Sun and Fun and right before Oshkosh, they have a long weekend, training in formation flying. So they have ground school, they have a whole setup of safety procedures, and then they go out with safety pilots and learn formation skills, the rejoins, the flying tight formation, the formation takeoff, section takeoff, all of this done in a very constructed, fine-tuned atmosphere. And this one, as it has been for many years in the past, is at Sebring. Perfect. It used to be an old B-17 training base.
Correct.
And that was right before Sun and Fun. Matter of fact, some of those very pilots just came in flying formation with the B-25 over MacDill. So it's not just Sun and Fun, it's the ramp up to it, get everybody getting ready, fine-tuning their skills, ready for the big fly-in here, you know, to have that Kodak courage moment when they're flying overhead and want to look good.
Yes.
And as Ralph Royce would say, a great air boss, don't do nothing dumb. This is the time to fine-tune your skills and make sure you've got your A game when you come to Sun and Fun.
Of course, and most of them do, because we hold a very good safety record here, and it's an enjoyable show, and it's the same thing every year. Now, let me ask you, if I want to fly a P-51, what do I have to do?
Well, you have to come and see us in Kissimmee.
Okay.
Our base of operations is at the Kissimmee Airport. We don't fly other places and hop rides. We've never hopped rides.
Okay.
Our orientation flights, whether you're a pilot or a non-pilot, start with about an hour ground school. We go over everything that we're going to do in that flight, aerobatics, procedures and takeoff, landing, etc., and tailor the flight to what it is that you were hoping to have. It's a bucket list item.
Right.
And we want to make sure that whatever your flying fantasy is, we fulfill it and meet it and exceed what you were hoping for. So we tailor the flight to what you want to do, your experience level, etc. Then we give you a complete cockpit orientation, because as a pilot yourself, you get in a new plane, you go, all right, I'm just spent the last 15 minutes looking for the airspeed indicator. And we don't want you to have to do that. We want you to enjoy the moment flying. So we do a cockpit orientation, a walk around, explain the airplane, all the systems, because it's a complex plane. And then we have the hour flight. Hands-on as much as you can do. Everything you say and do is videoed, because let's face it, no one's going to believe you flew a Mustang unless you got a video. Trust me, after you do fly it, everybody in the world's going to know, because you're going to share that video with everybody.
Of course.
Yeah. And so then we go over, once you come back, your flight, we go over the video, talk about the Immelmans and the split S's and so forth, so that when you share that video, you're able to explain those maneuvers.
Exactly.
And that almost lasts 3 hours with that hour flight in the middle. And we don't do, as I say, hop rides. So we have a couple flights in the morning and a couple in the afternoon, because we have 2 dual cockpit, dual control Mustangs. So you have our undivided attention. So you're not one of the masses. So we only do a couple flights in the morning and a couple in the afternoon, so that you have our, as I say, our complete attention. And so you want to make sure you call ahead, schedule your flight, and just dream about the fun you're going to have, and dream about it after you're done.
Let me tell you, I have to ask you this question because you speak with such passion that there's got to be some aviation history in your background.
Well, you know, in a funny sort of way, there is. I did not learn to fly until my mid-40s. And when we moved up here from Key West, we had worked for Mel Fisher for 18 years, found the Atocha, found the main pile, lots of treasure. But while we were looking for the Atocha, west of Key West, Florida, we found a TBM Avenger on the bottom.
Oh my
No,
God.
not one
Not
of the lost
from,
ones.
oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Not one of the ones from Fort Lauderdale. No, no. But there we are in the bottom, and we're airlifting it out. You can still see the stars and bars on it. You can see the parachute coming out of the back hatch. There's a 300-pound grouper in the cockpit, about a 7-foot hammerhead over the top of it. And it made me very excited about aviation, thinking, oh my, this is really cool. My husband was already a pilot at the time, and after 18 years of working for Mel, we'd pretty much done everything there was to do, and we wanted a new adventure. So we came up to Kissimmee, where Tom Riley had his vintage aircraft restoration.
I know Tom.
Riley World, we called it. Well, it's sort of like Mel Fisher of the air. Anything can happen there, and it did. I mean, he restored 10 B-25s, 3 B-17s, the last of which was Liberty Bell, and Panchito and Killer Bee, all of which my husband now is type rated at and flies. And it was an adventure there. So actually, the treasure hunting and finding the TBM led me to be interested in vintage aircraft, World War II aircraft. And so I came up here and I thought, well, if we're going to do this, I got to learn to fly, which I did. And we got a T6 right away. So I went from about a 70-hour Cessna pilot to a T6. Huge jump, which could be accomplished far smoother if I had been younger. But when you're in your mid-40s, you go, ooh, that's going to leave a mark if I do that wrong. You know, you're a little more anxious about what you're doing. But that T6 and working for Tom Riley opened up a plethora of opportunities to meet people, to experience history in a plane that made history, and to hear the stories from the people who made the history. It's been a wonderful experience, and certainly equal to finding all that treasure. We have found treasure here in Central Florida.
Right.
But I had no background in aviation until then.
But you know, I want to tell you something that you probably don't know. I am 50% Spanish, so I own a little bit of that.
I bet you do, but I'm borrowing it for a while yet. Thank you very much, but I think I'm going to just keep borrowing it for a while.
There was a lot of that stuff in there.
That's right, 47 tons of silver bars, silver coins, tens of thousands of emeralds. Just, it was a reef of silver bars that we found on July 20th, 1985, 40 feet long, 20 feet wide, and 5 feet high of solid silver bars.
I remember the pictures. I mean, I remember that.
We were there.
It was overwhelming.
It was overwhelming.
To find that much money.
Well, on adrenaline alone, another diver and myself swam an 80-pound bar up. Now you're going to say, oh, everything's lighter underwater, but so are you. So you have no ability swimming it up. And since then, my husband and I have always worked together. We went out 10 years ago and helped start the Pacific Aviation Museum out in Hawaii.
Okay.
And out there, though there were no galleons to find, we found one of the 9 Zeros that crash landed on the day the Pearl Harbor was attacked, and it had been hidden, forgotten, on the island of Ni'ihau, which is a Hawaiian island, privately owned, sometimes referred to as the Forbidden Island of Ni'ihau, and that Zero crash landed on that island the day of the attack on Pearl Harbor. The pilot survived, started an insurrection on the island, and eventually within 6 days was killed.
Right.
This was called the Battle of Ni'ihau. It was a battle on our own shores, or at that time a territory. And we found that Zero and brought it to the Pacific Aviation Museum that we started on Ford Island in Hawaii. And it is there today, but we have written a book about that because of all the documents that we found in the process of this mysterious Zero that no one knew about, that the family had said, no, we can't talk about it. The government told us back in 1941, don't talk about this, and so they didn't. And so we've gotten all their old records, all their old pictures, and now that Zero is in the Pacific Aviation Museum, and the book has just come out this year. It's called Before and Beyond the Ni'ihau Zero. Ni'ihau is spelled N-I-I-H-A-U. And it tells that background story of what happened then, which nobody knew about, and what happened as we recovered it, and what happened because it was put on display, and the hubbub that was created by bringing that history to light.
Right.
So I guess our starting with Mel Fisher 30-some years ago and finding treasures continued on finding it over in Hawaii.
Exactly.
That's a real excitement. It's not necessarily that it's millions of dollars worth of treasure, but it's invaluable history that was lost and you found it. It's like finding your keys in the house. You're real excited that day, aren't you?
You got that right.
So it all connects in a way. It's all history that it's so valuable and it's so exciting. And what we do at Stallion 51 and what they do here is, keep that history alive and accessible and exciting for the young people to want to know something about.
Of course. And it's our, it's the heritage, and not only that, when I see the warplanes, of course they're beautiful and everything, but what I see most is we want to keep those. We want to make sure that generations to come will enjoy what you said, the B-17 and then the AT-6. They're all flying together, the P-51.
There's nothing like that.
Because those pictures are unbelievable. It's like you get goosebumps
every
you know
time.
What I mean?
There's a big difference between seeing an airplane in a static display and seeing it flying.
Yes.
It's a lot like the difference between a natural history museum where the animals are stuffed and seeing them in a wildlife preserve.
Yes.
With all the smells and sounds that come with it. And that's what this does. This is what Sun and Fun does, and Oshkosh and all the air shows that seem to generate from Florida and spread out through the summer and then end up back here at the end, in November. Share that excitement just like going to a wildlife preserve.
Oh, of course. I remember I was a little kid, and I'm originally from Cuba. You probably didn't guess that. You probably think I'm from Massachusetts somewhere.
I thought I heard it. I thought I heard a Long Island accent.
So, but I remember the Cuban Air Force prior to Castro, of course. We had 51s and we had T-6s.
Of course.
And I remember the P-51 sound differently. It was like a whistle. It was like a...
And the whistle are the ports to the 50 caliber guns. That's what's whistling.
Oh,
sort of like blowing over the top of a Coke bottle.
Yes.
It's the open ports on the 50 cals on the wing that make that whistle sound. And you're the reason why we have these planes today. So many of these planes were lost, forgotten, thrown out, chopped up, whatever. But because of Cuba and South Africa and South American countries who took our B-25s, our P-51s, our T-6s and used them, we now are able to buy them back and use them. Otherwise, they would have been gone. So we're very beholding to your countries to have kept them flying all that time.
That's right. And that's what we had, because after the war, that's what the Cuban Air Force was made up of. Now, I want to dig a little bit more into your flying, and I want to ask you if you have any memorable experiences that you would like to relate, either when you were learning how to fly or after you were flying.
Well,
and I don't want to put you on the spot.
No. If you can't laugh at yourself, who are you going to laugh at, right?
I like that.
Yes. Well, the Kissimmee Tower loves this story. They tell all the new controllers this story. So I'm a new pilot. I don't know. I learned to fly initially, didn't finish, but learned in Key West, so I was very used to the water and flying around buoys. But I wasn't used to jet traffic, and I was coming in the pattern. I was practicing in RT6, and the tower says, come in, and you know, Kissimmee has a lot of motels and hotels.
Yes.
I mean, it's lined with them. And the tower says, come in behind the west wind, which I think's a hotel.
Yeah.
And I'm looking down and going, I don't see the west wind down there. I see a 4 points, sure. He said, no. He said, it's a jet. Yeah. Well, he tells every controller that one that it comes in that I thought the west wind was a hotel, and I've never made that mistake again. I do remember coming in one day in the T6 and being a tail dragger, they keep your attention. Right. T6 was considered, and still is considered, the pilot maker.
Yes.
Because she's a school marm. She'll slap you hard if you're not paying attention. And she's a handful, especially for a new pilot like me. And I was coming in, it was typical summer, and all of a sudden the wind whips around, a little storm thing coming up. And I'm going, boy, I'm on final. Boy, am I going fast. And I'm looking at the gauges, everything's fine. I land, and all of a sudden I'm facing the wrong direction.
That's not good.
Oh, I was looking at the ground loop, but I was in the grass between the runway and the taxiway. I'm sitting there with sewing machine legs. It scared the bejeebies out of me. And I called the tower and I said, excuse me, do I call tower, ground, or maintenance to get permission to taxi out of the grass? Those are my two stories. There are many stories, but those are the two.
Now, is there any, and now we're going to go kind of the political side just to, no, not politics, but aviation-wise.
Okay.
Is there anything that you would like to see change in aviation?
More young people. We need to keep aviation alive and thriving and interesting and accessible. And that's going to be a problem with fuel prices being high. Of course, nothing compared to Europe and everybody else. But you know what's happening? Experience Kissimmee is like the TDC of Osceola County, the neighboring county to here. And of course, they're known for the theme parks and everything else. They now realize through Sun and Fun that there's a whole group of people who come here, hundreds of thousands who come here for aviation. And if they can entice those people to come back to Florida to fly, to learn to fly, to do their flight reviews, etc., in, let's say, the winter months when there's no flying going on, right. Entice them back here, keep them interested in flying, because we've got lots of places for those $100 hamburgers, that I think that's going to keep aviation going and thriving. And to that end, you know that Experience Kissimmee is giving away a totally free trip to next year's Sun and Fun. You go on their website, Experience Kissimmee, and they're giving away airfare, hotel, tickets to Sun and Fun 2016 for a family of 4. That's for people to realize, fly into Central Florida, stay at Kissimmee Airport or Kissimmee area, fly in, have fun. Come here after the flying fun is done, come back to play and enjoy the area and stay involved in aviation year long.
Exactly. One of the things that, because I'm heavily into flight training, and that's been my pet peeves ever since. You know, I've done almost everything in aviation, but flight training is really what's my hat.
Yeah.
And I totally agree with you on that point. And I think one of the biggest problems we're facing right now is the attrition rate. And I think that schools and aviation organizations are really taking a close look at this, just to make sure, why is this happening? You know, why are we losing? Huh? Why don't we have the same enthusiasm as when we're going to go and check out on a P-51 forever? Yeah. You know, from 0 hour.
Well, it's got to be a community. Part of the fun, whether it's a fast clinic or coming here, is meeting with other people of like interests. That's why we have, I call it the Lunch Waffa group in Kissimmee. They all get together and fly someplace for lunch. Right. So the Lunch Waffa. You got to have a group of people, a community that keeps you excited about it and keeps you interested. Everybody's interests wax and wane, no matter what it is in your life. But you really need to have somebody sort of keep you going, and we need more community. And we also need, if they want more people to get involved in, let's say, aviation A&Ps or IAs, they got to pay them more than dirt. Car mechanics make more than aviation mechanics.
With a lot less responsibilities.
Absolutely. You can't pull over on the side of the road when your airplane's not working
I'm
well.
a mechanic too, by the way.
Well, then you understand. So that's a little bit of a problem. It's an expensive sport, but it's worth the expense if you have the fellowship and the excitement to do things together.
Exactly.
Because there's a lot of sports that are expensive, and they continue because they have other people encouraging them to come back and stay engaged. We need to get people engaged, and we need to bring up young people.
Exactly.
We need to mentor kids, not only in how to fly, but why to fly. And I was asked one time for women in aviation, you know, why did you learn to fly, or what did you get out of flying? And I said, well, you know, it's not I'm going to fly for a living, but it makes everything else in life easier. If you can take off a plane and land it, there's nothing else you can't figure out.
Exactly.
And that, for that alone, if kids could just get to that point and experience that feeling of self-confidence and self-worth, that's something right there, sort of like the Young Eagles program, but farther.
Exactly. One of the things that I'm working on right now, because I do, when I retire from everything. I retired from the FAA. I was a pilot examiner for 26 years.
Oh dear, oh, yes.
I've done over 6,000 check rides. And so I'm not going to tell you I've seen everything.
I bet you have a few stories, don't you?
Oh, yes,
oh,
yes.
Yeah.
So and that's exactly what I was going to say. I'm not going to tell you that I've seen everything, but I'm going to tell you that I've seen almost everything. But one of the things that I was talking to Eric Crump the other day, I interviewed him yesterday, as a matter of fact, is that the first flight, I think, is the most important flight. And these discovery flights that you get at schools, and I'm trying to start this campaign where these schools need to understand that when they get an individual for that first ride is when you get a pilot into the P-51. You want to make that experience the best there is, as complete as possible. And when you were saying how you prepared this pilot prior to getting him into the airplane, even though he's already a pilot, that's the same thing that I think we need to do on that discovery flight.
Yep.
Even though the person is not a pilot.
You don't know what they're going to be. It's up to you to mold that person.
Exactly. And that flight either turns them on or turns them off.
And they don't necessarily need to be a pilot to help support aviation, because what do we have? 600,000, let's say 600,000 pilots in a country that's 300 million people. Well, that's a real small percentage.
Exactly.
But if an equal number of people who maybe aren't pilots but are interested in aviation see the advantage of aviation, they're going to be our ambassadors to the general public. You don't have to be a pilot to be an ambassador or to someone to support aviation. You just need to know the intrinsic value of it, and introducing people to it, whether they ever get in a plane, ever get in the left seat or hold the stick again in their life, they hopefully will be an ambassador for aviation and help with those regulations that we hope don't happen, and keep fuel prices down and taxes down, because they see a value to it for the everyday person, even though they're not going to be one of those pilots.
The idea of keeping a student interested in aviation is very hard, and it should not be treated lightly by by CFIs, by flight instructors, and that's what I'm trying to do now, is trying to educate the CFI community. Like, when you get this individual in from the street, that's a golden nugget, but it can turn to a piece of coal.
Yes,
and it all depends how you address that individual, and what experience of that individual. Now, in terms of your experiences in flying, do you have any war stories? Like anything? Now, you don't have to, because the feds may be watching.
Oh, I know. Well, what I would like to share is I've had the opportunity, especially here, especially because of Tom Riley. All things start with Tom Riley. Yes. And the fact that when we'd be here with the B-25, men who had never told their families what they did in the war would tell that airplane the story. They'd come up to that B-25 and they'd start talking. It wasn't really to me or even whoever they brought with them, but they'd start talking to that plane about the common history and stories they shared. And from that, we got to hear about history, as I said, from the people who made it. Unpainted, but true history the way it was. We've been lucky. Dick Cole, Doolittle's co-pilot, we've flown with him several times. Talk about an awesome experience. We're good friends with the Wasps. Paul Tibbets of the B-29 Nola Gay was a very good friend of Sid's and mine. We've been blessed and honored to meet these people. And whether they're nameless or famous, all of them had a great story to share with us. And that was probably the best part of all of this, was meeting these people and being able to get to know them and know their story. And what we had in common were the Warbirds, and it all started with Tom Riley and Kissimmee Airport.
Correct. Got one more last question for you. Besides your husband, who do you consider a role model for you in aviation?
Ooh.
And I don't want to put you on the spot there. You can take the fifth if you want. It's no problem.
No. But it's more than one for different reasons. Of course, Lee Lauterbach is the highest time Mustang pilot in the world, and he has taken something that is truly like a one-off of anything. I mean, a Mustang flight, and he has made it into this amazing business, a Stallion 51 of flights and education, etc. Yes. Then there's someone like Larry Kelly, who with Panchito goes around and shares the history of the Doolittle Raiders. And then there's Tom Riley, who can fly anything, anywhere, at any time.
I foresee a statue in Kissimmee.
Yeah, I think
Tom Riley. It's at the airport over there.
And those are the three that are, I think, mean the most to me.
KT, let me tell you, this has been, for me, it's been a terrific time. I really enjoy listening to you. And but it's come to that time where we have to say goodbye. And for you out there, thank you so much. My name is Diego Alfonso with the Florida Aviation Network, and we'll see you in a little bit.